Welcome to the Faster Podcast by FLO Cycling, the podcast where we talk about anything and everything that makes you faster on your bike. This is Season 1, Episode 6, and today we have sleep specialist Dr. Chris Winter joining us on the show. Dubbed the Sleep Whisperer, Dr. Winter helps amateur and professional athletes perform better by improving the way they sleep. Dr. Winter, a fully board-certified neurologist and double board-certified sleep specialist, has been studying sleep for 25 years and recently published his first book, The Sleep Solution: Why Your Sleep is Broken and How to Fix It. Listen to this episode to learn how to optimize your sleep and become a faster cyclist. So, Dr. Winter, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for joining us today. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you guys doing?
Very good. Thanks. You just got finished up with your spring training with the Major League Baseball Association. How'd that go?
It went well. It was warm. We have a joke with my family that every time I do this trip, something happens. And there's a guy that I work with the Cleveland Indians. His name's Lonnie. And Lonnie told me a story one time when he was on the road with the Indians. Raccoons got into his attic, built a nest, and they started urinating everywhere. So his wife kept calling saying, "The house smells funny. I hear noises, and our ceiling's turning yellow." And, so he's like, "What do you want me to do? I'm in, some other city or whatever." So long story short, we call it Raccoon in the Attic. So every year I do this trip, there's always a raccoon in the attic. So the raccoon in the attic this year was trees fell all over the state of Virginia because of high winds, took out our power. So my 13-year-old's trying to run a generator. It's freezing cold. And so my wife's calling me, reporting all this stuff and saying, "I can't believe you walk out the door and, the trees fall everywhere." I'm like, "Look, I'm eating a tenderloin right now that's really under seasoned. So we're all struggling a little bit. That did not go over really well." So it's always fun to go out there and work with those guys and experience some warm weather. But there are negatives to every positive, yin and yang.
Absolutely. Yep. All right. Well,
sure.
You are an expert on sleep and how it relates to sports performance, and that's why we have you on the show today. Your book, The Sleep Solution, is awesome. I read a lot of books, and I really, really loved your book. It's a great mix of humor, just a lot of great, no BS, practical information. You have some really great examples and analogies that make your concepts super clear and easy to understand. And I always find, or after reading the book, I've realized that there's a lot of wives' tales surrounding sleep, and I feel like your book really helps cut to the point. So it's really well done. I'm an audiobook fan. Your audiobook is also really well done, and I recommend anyone listening to this today to read the book. It's great. So it's funny, not because of the content, clearly not because of the content, but reading your book just made me want to sleep. All the talk about sleep made me want to go take a nap. So anyway, there's like
it's like listening to the sound of running water and what it makes you want to do.
Exactly. And it's funny, in the beginning of your book, there were some general facts that you kind of pointed out. And it's one of them was the average primary care physician receives 2 hours of sleep training in medical school. And then you also said that sleep affects every part of our body and our health. And when sleep isn't working, you don't work, basically. And those were some really cool things. And the part about the primary care physician receiving 2 hours of sleep training, basically by reading your book, I have more sleep training than most doctors, which is kind of a scary thought when you think about
Absolutely.
it. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So anyway, today we want to talk about first athletic performance and how it relates to sleep, and then how we can sleep better. So let's get right into the athletic performance side of it and just start with a very general question on why is sleep important for athletic performance?
To me, sleep is sort of the foundation of athletic performance. I mean, I think that you could ask the same question about nutrition or strength or endurance training. Why do we lift weights? Why do we go out and do 20-mile bike rides to prepare for whatever? Why don't we just read a lot about riding a bike and then hop on it and then just race? Those are kind of absurd. Or, I've really kind of cut hydration out of my training and I'm feeling a whole lot better. It doesn't, these are just, they're gospel to some extent. And for a long time, sleep was just, it was sort of forgotten. It was almost considered to be like a trait. You can't be a bike rider if you have brown hair. Well, that doesn't make any sense. That has nothing to do with anything. It's this static trait. And, brown-haired bicyclists can do just as well as blonde-haired. Maybe not look as cool when they're riding their bike with the blonde hair flowing, but but people thought about sleep that way. Like, well, I've got great sleep, or I don't sleep that much, or I'm a terrible sleeper and so is my mom, so there's not much I can do about that. And sort of like hydration, back in the day with baseball, these guys wouldn't think about hydration. They'd drink a lot of alcohol the night before their game and eat some steaks and chase some women and go out there and try to win a baseball game and not really give it much thought until somebody said, you know what? If we give them this Gatorade mixture, they do a whole lot better. And suddenly it becomes, again, gospel. And I can buy Gatorade at a gas station convenience store and feel like an athlete. So, I think sleep is that way. Now all of a sudden people are thinking, wow, this is a modifiable thing. There are things we can do to not only sleep better, but there are problems with our sleep that we can now recognize and address and not think of as being, something that we can't fix. So I think in order to reach your full potential, particularly if you're an athlete who's a little older, by a little older, I mean, older than 22. I mean, young athletes, I feel like, can abuse themselves and stay up all night and not take care of themselves and go out and crush you the next day and feel just fine about it. So it's difficult sometimes to convince a young athlete, hey, look, maybe you could be better, or you could do this thing you love to do longer if you took care of your sleep. And if they look up from their video game long enough to interact with you, you might get somewhere with them. But, so but as we get older, we just don't recover. To me, it's all about recovery. And when I talk to older baseball players, they'll tell you, I could have played longer, particularly if the season were short, but to go through an entire training camp, off season, keeping myself in shape, and then, pitch for X number of games. I have 162. I don't have it in me, like the ability to recover from the wear and tear and the travel anymore. So to me, sleep's all about those things.
Nice. Cool. So talking about that, how much of an effect can poor sleep have on athletic performance from somebody that sleeps well and somebody who doesn't?
Oh, I think it could be massive. And the issue really becomes, for people who don't sleep well, it's so subtle and slow. I mean, it's kind of like, how much of an issue can rust have on your car? Well, it can have a lot of, but, it's the kind of thing that it just kind of creeps into a situation. It's not sleep problems are not a heart attack or a stroke, although they can be certainly related to people who sleep poorly. It's the slow down over a long period of time and the adaptation you do to kind of get over it. But to me, the difference between somebody who's very well slept, somebody who's very well adapted to a time zone, versus somebody who doesn't sleep well and doesn't take into consideration, hey, their upcoming races in Beijing, they live in Salt Lake City. There might need to be some thought there in terms of how can we adapt this person to perform at their best. I think it could be a swing of somewhere on the order of 20 to 25% easily.
Wow.
That you could see. And if you ask them, the analogy I always try to give people is, look, if you're somebody who you have a certain time that you train, you get home from work and you do your 28-mile bike ride as soon as you get home in the evening, or you get up first thing in the morning and do it, switch things up one day and do that bike ride 12 hours after you would typically do it, or stay up all night and pull your all-nighter at work, get your architectural drafts done and take them in, and then go for your 28-mile bike ride and just feel the difference in terms of your performance. It's really striking. So it's also one of those things that's perfectly in your own control to do.
Yeah.
And we always laugh that, we worked with sort of these kind of hedge fund managers. I don't know what that means, but they work out in San Francisco. They make more money than I'll see in my lifetime. And they're intensely, driven to, buy your bike and compete in triathlons. And they also have 3 kids and they try to do it all. And, they would never, tell their kid they were going to pick them up after school and be 3 hours late. That's just not acceptable to them. But they'll easily sacrifice 3 hours of their sleep in order to get their training in, or for this meeting or this trip. So it's interesting the way we think about sleep. And I think that the real elite athletes, when you meet them, they've gotten that all together. They understand that you don't really have to tell them, which is why my kids are always disappointed. Hey, did you work with X, Y, and Z player when you were at that team? I'm like, not much, because they get it.
Right.
That's probably why they're elite. I'm working with a guy who's not probably going to make the team, or is kind of a bench person who, is really struggling to help his 3-year-old daughter not wet the bed every night because she sleeps in bed with, the player and his wife. Hey man, you might want to get your kid his own toddler bed or her own toddler bed. It might help your performance a little bit.
Yeah. I can't think of a hedge fund manager without seeing like a guy who like prunes these perfectly green hedges every day. That's what I see when I think of
they have certain traits, don't they?
I think they do. Yeah. So there's different types of athletes too. So, you've got people that do endurance stuff. So high volume, you've got power athletes like power lifters, and you've also got mental athletes like a pitcher. How does sleep affect those athletes in different ways?
Sure. So, if we take them in order you just gave them, I think for the endurance athlete, the cyclist, the triathlete, the runner, I think that given the high volume of training they do, the wear on their body, to me, sleep is so important, particularly deep sleep. The sort of the basic part of the first half of somebody's night. When you look at little kids when they fall asleep in a car seat, they get a ton of deep sleep. So you can pick them up out of their car seat when you get home from grandma's house late, and you can throw them in their bed and put their pajamas on and kind of brush their teeth, and they never even wake up. They're so dead once they fall asleep. That's a trait of deep sleep. And so for the power or the endurance athlete, if you don't have that deep sleep as a big part of your night to night ritual, you're not going to recover from the beating you put on your body. The soccer player that runs continuously. So it's very important for those individuals to train and sleep properly, because without proper sleep, they're not going to stay in their career very long. They're not going to do very well. From the power athlete perspective, it was shown in a study that after just 3 days of restricted sleep, and the average collegiate athlete will drop about 20 pounds on their bench press, which is considerable. And not even sleep deprivation. That's sort of an individual who's used to getting 8 or 9 hours of sleep, getting 5 hours of sleep for 3 nights, which we all fall prey to. I mean, God knows I do. So that kind of, I work with a lot of athletes. I've got a couple athletes like that in my home. I've got a swimmer, kind of an elite level swimmer in my house, and he drives you nuts because you go to this meet and he's off by 0.2 seconds, and you're like, hey, that was a good swim. It's pretty good. And he's like, oh no, it's terrible.
Yeah.
So wow, like if I do this, if that difference right there is the difference between we're fired up and celebrating at Stone Cold Creamery or we're miserable in the hotel room for a 3-day weekend. I guess, it's so interesting. But anyway, but if that's the case, if you're that person listening to it, like you're not laughing at this joke, you're like, that's not funny. That 0.2 seconds is the world to me. Then you can't have the situation where you check into the hotel and the air conditioner's loud and the people next to you are banging against the wall for who knows what reason, or the air conditioner keeps cutting on, cutting off. Like, you've got to control these things. You've got to have a great night of sleep that night and the nights leading up to it. If that little 20-pound difference is going to make a difference. And for the mental athletes, sleep is a complete, trying to think of a nice word to put it, kind of a mind, it kind of screws with your mind, meaning, you're going to sit here and you got some kind of mental athlete listening to this podcast, and he's read my book, and now he's all fired up that, yes, sleep is everything. And if you don't sleep well, you're not going to lift that 20 pounds, or you're not going to pitch well the next day. So one of my favorite sayings that I always tell these mental athletes is that, look, sleep's the most important thing in the world outside of bacon, maybe. Maybe you can make an argument bacon's more important than sleep, but sleep's pretty important. I always tell people sleep's the most important thing in the world, but tonight's sleep for you is somewhat irrelevant. Meaning, listen, if 30 days out of 31 days you sleep wonderfully, you're getting your 9 hours of sleep, your environment's great, you feel rested, and the night before you pitch, it's not perfect. You set everything up to be perfect, but you felt like you were tossing and turning, or it took you a few extra hours to fall asleep. Your performance is going to be great. And to me, I would always look at it as somebody who eats really well. You eat so well. You're really careful about your calories and the proportion of fat to protein and all that good stuff. And you've got enough carbs to fuel your race coming up in a few weeks. And then, the night before your race, maybe you don't eat a great dinner, or you skip lunch because of your travel for whatever reason. Well, all is not lost. Well, forget the triathlon. I didn't have lunch today.
Yeah.
Well, like, I think you're better than that. So for the mental athlete, I really try to stress the idea of resting and how important that is. So instead of getting up and being frustrated and, watching some Game of Thrones or something and thinking, forget it, I can't sleep, all is lost, this is terrible, then you control what you can control, which is basically your environment's quiet and dark, you're lying there with your eyes closed, you're visualizing that swim to bike transition, going through it in your mind. You have a plan for when sleep is not where you want it to be. And I think those people do quite well with that. There's a lot of interesting research that says resting does most of what sleep does if you do it effectively, like meditative kind of resting, not checking your watch every 5 minutes and swearing to yourself, no, I'm still awake kind of thing. Like, that's not a good thing.
We're talking in the first 10 minutes here about sleep, Cold Stone Creamery, bacon, and Game of Thrones. Like this is not going to work out well for me at the end of this podcast.
It's all good stuff.
Yeah, it's all good stuff.
I probably watch a little too much television. I'm definitely a child.
Hey, you're resting.
Child.
Yeah,
that's right. Yeah, absolutely.
Let's get into some general sleep topics to start off with. I think it's kind of that age-old question, and you talk about it in the book. How much sleep do we need?
How much sleep do we need? Sure. So I would say we need enough. I think that's what I said in the book. Like, we need enough. And I'm not trying to be funny or flippant about the answer, but it really sort of speaks to, all the people who are listening to this podcast, every one of you need a different amount. So it's great to pick a number, or it's fine to throw out averages. Okay, we need an average of 8 hours of sleep. But my guess is the people listening to your podcast and buying your amazing bikes and things that go along with it, or wheels, I should say. They may need more. I mean, if you're, and that's okay, but you also may need less. So to me, it's really about let's pick a time. We can go for 8 hours. Okay, so 8 hours. There's a fair amount of people who, if they chose 8 hours, would tell you that worked out very well for them. So thank you, Dr. Oz, for telling us that we all need 8 hours. We're going to have a horrible heart attack or stroke. Then that works out well for most people. And if we all planned a FLO picnic and I got to come and we decided, okay, well, we'll buy 2 hot dogs and a hamburger for every person who's going to come, that's probably going to work out pretty well. It's probably what the average person would eat at the annual FLO picnic and celebration, or whatever we're calling it. But that doesn't mean everybody will. And I think that we have to be very careful when we start applying averages to individuals. And for a lot of people who listen to these types of things and pay attention to it, it's sometimes hard to discern that. So to me, you pick 8 hours, and then I'm going to ask people questions like, how long does it take you to fall asleep? Do you sleep continually during the night, or do you wake up a lot? Maybe most importantly, how do you feel the next day? Do you feel driven to crawl under your desk and take a nap? Do you fall asleep in meetings? Are you nodding off at stoplights or during your kid's soccer game? Actually, it's fine to nod off during a soccer game. I think that would be perfectly fine.
Especially under the age of 5.
I'm wondering if you're watching a 5-year-old play soccer and you're not nodding off, you're way too invested in your kid's future, I think. So you got to back off on them. Yes, they're supposed to travel in a little dog pack, around the field. They'll separate out in a few years. So anyway, so if that's the case, and you're saying, look, I got 8 hours and I'm falling asleep in 30 seconds when I get in bed. I'm sleeping very soundly. I can't stay awake during meetings. Maybe you need 8.5. Maybe you need 9. Maybe there's something wrong with the sleep you're getting. So it feels like you need 8 or 9 hours, but in fact, you're compensating for poor quality sleep with more quantity. The flip side is also true. You've decided 8 hours. When we go to bed at 11, get up at 7. But it's taking you an hour to fall asleep. One of my favorite questions to ask people when they come in and say, what can I do for you today? Well, how you can help me sleep? I really struggle with my sleep. Well, tell me about it. Well, I get in bed. It takes me an hour, 2 hours to fall asleep. What time do you go to bed? 10. My favorite question to ask is, why have you chosen 10 as your bedtime? And they look at you like, oof, never thought about that before. It's because 10 is sort of a nice number. We have 10 fingers, 10 toes. We kind of work on a base 10 numerical system. Is that why you've chosen it? Have you chosen it because your wife goes to bed at 10 and you want to be a good spouse, so you go to bed at 10 too? Is it because there's nothing good on TV after 10 o'clock at night? You went to bed when you were 17 years old at 10 o'clock because that was when your parents put you to bed. Now you're 47 and you just kind of stuck with it. Like, what is your rationale for it? Because it sounds to me like your brain is not really ready to sleep at 10 o'clock. So to me, it's sort of like deciding, okay, I'm going to go to lunch every day at 10 a.m. And a friend might say, oh, 10 a.m., wow, it seems pretty early. Okay, well, what happens when you go to lunch? Well, I go there, I sit down at my favorite lunch place, and the waitress comes and says, what do you want to eat? I'm like, well, I'm not hungry. And the waitress kind of looks at you funny, like, what are you doing here? Well, it's 10 o'clock. This is my lunchtime. So if you could just go do some work and come back into my booth around noon, I'll be ready to eat. And so the waitress is going to say, well, honey, why don't you just come at noon and eat and maybe run an errand or two in the meantime? Like, why would you? So I always tell people that you should treat your bed like the restaurant. Or some people have said, treat your bed like the train station. You don't have to get there early. Just get there before the train comes. If the train's coming at midnight, then go to bed at midnight. Like, our brains know what we want. So, but at the same time, if somebody said to me, look, I go to bed at 10, it takes me 2 hours to fall asleep, but I like that time. I kind of like lying in bed. It's relaxing. My kids aren't breaking my belongings. My wife's not telling me to paint some room a different color because we just painted it 6 months ago. If you like that, it gives you time to reflect on your day, plan your upcoming days. You're into saying a little affirmation or a blessing or a prayer. That's great too. Or if you're like me, I just like to sit there and think about Giada. She's my celebrity crush. And I think of us going across Italy and she's cooking these amazing dishes for me. And of course, my wife's totally on board with that. She can come if she wants to or not. Somebody's got to watch the kids, right?
Yeah.
So the squirrels in the attic. So to me, it's all about what you want. So to me, if 7 works out for you, or somebody says, look, I'm getting 6.5 and feel great. When I try to sleep 7.5, I can't do it. Maybe 6.5 is perfect for you. So it really is choice.
Awesome. Those little good analogies are what the book is full of. The restaurant and eating. Again, you should definitely listen to this book because after you read it, it makes so much sense about sleep. One of the things that you talk about in the book, people say that you always have the people say, I never sleep. And you in the book say, everybody sleeps. So can you talk about that?
Yes, I think I'm glad you brought that up because that's sort of my little soapbox. I would love to see that sort of removed from the way we speak about things. It's sort of, it's not true. It feels true. It was like Stephen Colbert's word, truthiness. It feels true, and I've got this great article in one of my slideshows that it's, a reputable magazine, and it said, why 60 million Americans can't sleep. In fact, I've got one that says why 50 million Americans can't sleep. And then 2 years later, a different magazine ran a different article and said why 60 million Americans can't sleep. I always make the joke that in 3 years, we've picked up 10 million more people who can't sleep. So it becomes this sort of Dan Brown saga. What's going on here? It's a government secret. They're putting something in our milk that makes us. So, but the point is, we have a lot of people who are not satisfied with their sleep. We have a lot of people who feel like they don't sleep. And it's interesting to get somebody, I had a judge in here in my clinic, and she's a very intelligent woman. And, I asked her, why are you here? Well, I don't sleep. And so my follow-up to that is always, when you say you don't sleep, what do you mean? And she looked at me and said, what I mean is I don't sleep. Like, are you an idiot? I don't sleep. And so now you got a live one on the hook, Well, tell me more about that. Well, how often do you sleep, or when's the last time you slept? And she really couldn't answer the question. She said, I get in bed. Sometimes I'll kind of nod off beforehand watching TV a little bit, but I get in bed and I just kind of sit there. So I said, well, what time do you go to bed? Well, 10 or 11. What time you out of bed in the morning? 7:30. Wow. That's a long car trip. That's a big flight commitment to the West Coast, more. Yeah. I said, does it feel logical? I said, and the joke I always make is when they tell me that, I suddenly look at my watch and I go, oh my God, I'm late for a meeting. I've got to step out for a minute. It is, it's 8 o'clock. I will be back here sometime around 4 in the afternoon. Can we just pick up where we left off? And in the meantime, would you mind just staring at this wall where my diploma is hanging and just stare at it? If you want to look at your watch every now and then, you can, but I'll be back in about 8 hours. Is that okay? And they look at you at first like, what are you talking about? And then they kind of get it. Like, of course they're not okay with it. Nobody's okay with sitting in a chair staring at a wall for 8 hours. Wow. If I told you I had to take a 20-minute phone call, you'd be irritated with me. Yet people are telling me they're doing that every night, 8 hours, just sitting there. So you can do one of a couple things. Well, hey, if you're somebody who doesn't sleep, why don't you make use of that time? You could get some things done. You could clean some windows. You could answer some emails. You could get caught up on your scrapbooking. Whatever you like to do, you could do it, and we've asked people to do that before. Why don't you just not go to bed for a couple nights? And they can't do it. In fact, they'll often respond like, "Ooh, I don't think I could do that." Well, what's the difference between painting Civil War figurines, which is your little hobby, versus lying in bed staring at the ceiling, like
and not sleeping?
Yeah. So when you really kind of break it down, or if people wear a Fitbit, or some sort of wearable device that looks at their sleep, one of my favorite things for them to do is when you wake up in the morning, declare to the world how much you slept. Okay, I slept 20 minutes last night. Now look at your Fitbit. Oh, 6 hours, 38 minutes. Huh. And a lot of people, I swear to God, are probably throwing their Fitbits away because they feel like this thing thinks I'm sleeping 6 hours and 38 minutes. Yeah. And so it's important to understand that you sleep. So when you come to see me, we often try to redefine the problem. I'm not telling you don't have a problem. I'm not saying, hey, you sleep, you've got no problem, get out of here, you're wasting my time. It's not that at all. It's the problem you're here for. And the reason why your 8th sleeping pill doesn't work is because you and your doctor are addressing the wrong problem. That's not the problem. Like if I feel bloated and go declare to my doctor, I'm pregnant, can we work this thing up here a little bit and fix it? If my doctor believes me, we're not going to get anywhere, because I'm a man and I'm 45 and well past my fertile years, I think. So, but if we define the problem properly, we start to make headway. And that's very important for the person who doesn't think they sleep. Listen, you've got a problem. It may just be the fact you perceive sleep poorly. There's something that's making you're not capable of feeling that you sleep. But if we get hung up in the I don't care what you say, I sleep sort of thing. And we've done sleep studies for people. I talk about in the book, a woman, one of my very first patients when I started my clinic, she came with her husband and said, I don't sleep. And when I said, I think you do, and we got into it, she wasn't really happy with me. And at one point I said to her, like, look, I don't share a bed with you. And she said, thank God. Like, hey, now that's careful there. That's offensive. But anyway, so and the whole time her husband was there, and he had this look on his face like, I agree with you, doctor, but I can't indicate such because I have to live with this woman. So it was just very uncomfortable. Like he knew the answer, but he couldn't say anything because she kept looking at him. Tell him, honey. And she'd be like, yes, she says she doesn't sleep. Like he was careful with his words. He didn't say yes. Every time I get up to go to the bathroom at night, she's wide awake, just staring at the ceiling. Like he knew she slept. So anyway, we did a sleep study. And when they came back together, he was literally sweating. You could see little beads of sweat on his face because he knew it was coming. And she said, I said, well, my standard thing is, how was your sleep study? It was terrible. I don't understand how anybody could sleep with wires taped to their head. How much did you sleep? I didn't sleep at all. Did you not hear what I said? I said, did you actually know you slept 6 hours and some odd minutes? And she said, I didn't. And so I played a video for her. So now there's a video of her, the little infrared camera, of her just going to town snoring. I mean, she's out cold. It's not even a debatable sleep, and she looked at it and looked at it and looked at it, and you could see her lips disappear. Like by the time we were done, she looked like Mike Krzyzewski. She had no lips. They were gone. and the husband was really looking at me, pleading with his eyes, careful, like you were walking into it. And she stood up and said, honey, I told you he was too young to be a doctor, and they left. So it's a very interesting thing when you start getting into this idea of chronic bad insomnia, how it starts to get folded into your person. And like, because if so say John and Chris, who are these guys? They're guys who are dedicated to their craft, and they make these amazing wheels, and they do this awesome podcast. So you have this great identity. Maybe you're awesome fathers or really good friends, or you have really good taste in beer. I don't know who you are, but you've got these things that you define yourself with. And for some people, being the person who doesn't sleep, no doctor can figure you out, no pill works, that's who you are. And God bless you if you get stuck with talking to those people at the holiday party at the end of the year. Oh, hey, I'm Chris. I'm such and such's wife. Who are you? I'm Gladys, and I can't sleep. Doctors can't figure me out. I haven't slept well since the Clinton administration. So you're like, oh my God, I got to go get another drink. Well, I'll get one for you. I'm going over there anyway. And you're like, oh my God, get me out of this. But I'm making fun of these people, and I shouldn't. But it can be this very wrapped up sort of thing, and not just, oh, you think I sleep and I don't think I sleep? Okay, I believe you. It's not usually that simple.
Crazy. Okay, so in the book you talk about fatigue and sleepiness, and they're different things. Can you explain the difference between those?
Absolutely. So bike rider at the end of a very difficult bike ride is fatigue. I think of that as sort of a muscle mitochondria level thing. Like you don't have enough, whatever that chemical is in your body, to make your leg able to push down that pedal particularly effectively. And the problem is we use the word tired sometimes for that, but we also use the word tired for sleepy. Sleepy, my definition is how likely are you to fall asleep in a certain situation? So I've met a lot of athletes before. I've never, talked to a cyclist who said I was competing in a, 30-mile road race and I got to mile marker 28 and I was just so tired. I just set the bike down on the side of the road and took a nap. Felt so much better. Like I couldn't make it to the finish line because I was so sleepy.
Right.
That's different than fatigue. I'm sure there's a biker out there who was killing it, and in the last 2 miles, he just kind of faded. The person who was right behind him was able to surge past him, and he just didn't have enough in the tank to catch him.
We've all done that.
Yeah, exactly. So to me, those are different things. Now, what happens though is people who struggle with fatigue will often do things that you would typically do were you sleepy to combat it. So you're at home, you've got this overwhelming fatigue either because you went on a big bike ride or you didn't. You've got something wrong with your thyroid or your testosterone is low or there's something making you feel quote unquote tired. So you're like, oh God, I'm so tired. I really should go out there and mow the lawn or do my evening bike ride or my evening lift session, but I'm not feeling it tonight. So I'm going to bed. Well, honey, it's 6:30. It's pretty early. I know, but I can't even get down on the ground and help you fold that laundry. I'm just so fatigued. I'm so tired. So they go to bed, and then what happens? They can't fall asleep. So they're sitting there for an hour or two, twiddling their thumbs and getting frustrated. Oh, I'm so tired, yet I can't fall asleep. Right. You're so tired, so rest. Don't mow the lawn. Skip your afternoon workout if you're feeling that fatigue. Maybe you're getting sick. Maybe your medications for your thyroid are not right. Maybe this is the beginning of a vitamin D deficiency. There's lots of things cause you feel fatigued. Maybe there's a tick sucking on your blood somewhere you haven't figured out, and it's making you feel fatigued or whatever. Go to bed when you feel sleepy. Like I'm reading this book, I can't keep my eyes open, or I keep nodding off at the end of this episode of Scandal, and I'm really into Scandal, and it's the last season of Scandal, so I can't believe I would fall asleep and not know what's going on with Fritz in the presidency or whatever. Right. So to me, they're two different things, but we often kind of lump them into one. And to your point about medical students not getting a lot of training in sleep, this is the kind of thing. If you go to your doctor and it's a big visit, checking your diabetes medication, you have high blood pressure, and the doctor's 30 minutes behind already. I'm tired, doc. Well, here, take this Ambien. There's not a lot of thought to it because they don't have time to really get into, well, what do you mean by tired? Tell me, are you sleepy? Are you do a little sleep assessment like I have in the book, and you're scoring high on that or very low? So it's important, I think, as a patient or as an athlete to know the difference between, what might just be typical soreness from a heavy day versus, oh, I might be on the verge of injuring myself. I need to ice my leg and take it easy because I'm getting a little bit of tightness in this place that I shouldn't be because of whatever. It's important for you to also know the difference between sleepy and fatigue. Okay, I'm very fatigued. I had a heavy day. I need to rest a little bit more, take it easy, have more of a recovery day tomorrow versus I'm sleepy, and that either means I need more sleep or there might be something wrong with it.
Okay, interesting.
Very cool.
Let's get into the stages of sleep. We hear a lot about the stages of sleep. Can you kind of set the record straight for us? Are there different stages of sleep? And if so, what are they?
So there are. So to make it easy, there's light sleep, deep sleep, dream sleep. Pretty much. There used to be different differentiations, or scientifically we can kind of pull it apart. But for the most part, those are the things we're really looking at. So first of all, dream sleep, deep sleep are two different things. In fact, dream sleep is a very light looking sleep. And the only reason if you look at somebody dreaming, if you can't see what their eyes are doing, so dream sleep is often called rapid eye movement sleep because your eyes do very funky things when you dream. If you didn't have access to your eye movements and you didn't have access to your overall muscle tone, just looking at brain activity when we dream, very difficult to distinguish that between wakefulness. So it's a very light, kind of busy stage of sleep versus deep sleep, which looks very primitive. I mean, you have these massive, slow waves. It's like all the thinking parts of our brain have been turned off. And the part of the brain we share with, an earthworm or a mouse is kind of in control. That sort of brainstem function that helps us breathe and blink our eyes and all the things we kind of primitively do. It's sort of in charge during that time period. So most of our first half of our night is, we find the deep sleep there. So 25% of our night's deep sleep, 25% is dreaming, and the other 50% or so is light sleep, to be very rough about it. But if you split the night in half, so much more deep sleep during the first half of the night, and then so much more dreaming during the second half of the night. Which is important, because if somebody says, look, I sleep great for the first half of my night, but the second half's a big mess, or I really struggle for the first couple hours when I get into bed, but by the time my alarm goes off, I feel like I was sleeping wonderfully. Those kinds of stories, when I hear them as a patient or from an athlete, give me a clue as to what might be going on with their sleep. So these things are important. Deep sleep is our recovery sleep. If you're an elite athlete, got to get deep sleep. And if you're an elite athlete who really likes to go out at night, if you're somebody who likes to frequent bars, likes to stay up playing video games, likes to burn it on Netflix at night, and you routinely will stay up till 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, or that's your pattern on the weekend, when we suddenly stay up late, we will often go to bed late, which will often make us skip over our deep sleep. So our deep sleep is very scheduled. So if you're always going to bed at 10 o'clock at night, your brain knows when to get its deep sleep. If suddenly you go to bed at 2 o'clock in the morning, your brain just doesn't pick up at 2 o'clock in the morning and create these wonderful cycles of deep sleep. You kind of skip over them, which is probably one of the reasons why shift work is so difficult and hard on our bodies. So if you care about your performance in your sport, you really should have a consistent bedtime and really stick to it, because that's where you're going to recover. REM sleep is mainly during the second half of the night, which is why we're often dreaming intensely right before we wake up. And these great, dreams. It could be great movie screenplays or whatnot. And then you kind of forget about it later on. REM sleep is really important for memory, focus, mood, and even pain perception. So the two aspects of our sleep really do two different things and are completely separate. I mean, I could teach anybody how to differentiate the stages of sleep in about 5 minutes. They look totally different.
Interesting. It's
cool.
funny you talk about the sleep schedule in the book too, and how important that is, and having that consistent sleep schedule, and how it makes a big difference. Talking about kind of your sleep schedule and your environment, you talk about a sleep environment and where we sleep and how important that is. Can you talk a little bit about setting up a good sleep environment?
Sure. So I always tell my patients, one question people like to ask a lot is, what's the best mattress to buy, or what's the best pillow to buy? And I've got all kinds of ideas about that, but it really depends upon what you're looking for. Are you somebody who sleeps hot at night? Are you somebody with a shoulder injury, and the traditional, mattresses kind of put pressure on your shoulder in funny ways? Or pitchers are often kind of notorious about being very careful in the way they sleep and what they sleep on. There's all, if you're somebody who just really likes organic products and are scared of chemicals or bed bugs or, whatever. So to me, choosing bedding is important because they can support things that matter to you when you sleep. But, more importantly, I just try to get people to kind of focus on their bedroom and really make it a place that's incredibly inviting. A place that when you're, pulling your socks off at night and brushing your teeth, you're a little excited to get into. Oh, I can't wait to get in that bed because it's so comfortable and perfect for what I want. I think that's important. And I think that one thing a lot of people struggle with, and there's not a name for it, I want to coin a cool term, but it's this feeling that the day is over and you've finally gotten some stuff done and you've cleaned up the kitchen and the kids, you helped them with their homework and you've signed some permission notes and packed some lunches and you finally sat down for the first time at 10:07. And you really should be in bed by 11 in order to get the sleep that you need, or maybe even earlier. But there's this feeling like I've not had any time for myself today.
Decompression,
decompression. I just want to sit down and watch really bad television. Like, oh wow, look, a tiny house. I'm just riveted by what this couple's going to do. Will they choose the more modern tiny house, or the little one with the funny little nook for eating? Like, suddenly that becomes really important to you at 10:45 at night. So and that's fine. I think it's fine to be able to shut off a little bit. But so I think there's this thought that if I go to bed now, the next thing I know, the alarm clock's going off and I'm starting this kind of routine again, without ever having a time. So I think it's important to have a bedroom that really beckons to somebody. It's not tolerable. It's, I really want to get in there, and I've got this little thing that heats my bed up, and then when I get into bed, it cuts off so it can cool down. Or I like a really cold bed, so I go in there and turn this thing on 30 minutes before I go to bed. When I get into bed, it's like ice cold. I love it. The sheets are really soft and unique, and I've got the blankets I like and the pillow I like, and this person sleeping next to me is pretty good too. Like, everything's kind of working out pretty well, and so you really want that. So I think that the environment's incredibly important. I mean, is it if 100 people have sleep problems, is setting up the environment going to solve all their problems? No. Maybe 10 of them will say, wow, adjusting my environment, giving it some thought, the lighting, the paint on the walls, trying to get clutter out of there, make it a very neat place, making my bed every morning when I get up has really helped, in this small way. But, even though it's maybe a small percentage, I think it's one of those things that is going to enhance anyone. I can't imagine meeting somebody who really overhauls their bedroom and then says, it did nothing. I don't think that would happen, and sometimes it's not about solving a problem. It's about taking your sleep to maybe a little bit of a higher level. It's that whole British cycling kind of philosophy of, let's make our bedroom 2%, 1% better, or make our bedroom better, and that'll make my performance 1% better, and I'll pay attention to the clothing I wear, and that'll make it 1% better, and I'll get these really cool shoes that are half the weight of my other old cycling shoes, or buy one of your really high-end wheels, and that'll make. So if you add up all those little 1%, suddenly you're 10% better, and that's good enough to beat that person that really annoys you, always shows up to the races, thinks they're really hot. Now you beat that person, and you feel really good about yourself.
Nice.
That's cool. Let's talk about something else. Something I really love doing, but after checking out in your book, I'm not sure it's the best for me. You say napping is for some people and is not good for others. I love a good nap. So talk to us about naps.
Yeah, I do too. I think there's very few things better than the feeling of kind of this bonus secret sleep, the sleep you get in your office and wherever, it might be even better sometimes. But so to me, the way I think about napping is, I think about napping like a sleep snack. It's not, you're not relying on it to fuel you, but sometimes you need a little bit more, or for whatever reason. Like, I'm really hungry today. I don't know why. Maybe it's because I know going in, I'm going to have to wait to eat for an hour while we do this podcast. Kind of like when your doctor says you got to fast before you have your cholesterol checked. And ordinarily you don't eat that much after dinner anyway. But now, because he's told you no food after dinner until you have your blood work done the next day, all of a sudden you're like, oh my God, I'm dying here. You're starving. So anyway, so the nap, to me, if somebody says, look, I'm pretty consistent with my sleep. I sleep really well. But sometimes I like to take a little nap at my office, and it really makes me feel better that day, and it doesn't really seem to affect my sleep that night. Listen, go for it. I think setting aside a time to nap or even just meditate every day, even for like 5 or 10 minutes, is awesome. What I don't want is the person saying, I went to bed last night, 11 o'clock, and I was pretty wound up about Virginia losing. They really busted my bracket, and I really, I actually went to Virginia, so I'm kind of torn up about it. We've made history for all the wrong reasons, so I'm pretty torn up about that, and it just took me until 2 or 3 more o'clock in the morning to fall asleep. So I'm going to give myself a license to take a 2-hour nap in the afternoon. I think you have to be careful when your brain had the opportunity to sleep and chose not to. So for whatever reason, you had a bad night. You're up till 3 o'clock in the morning. And now you're going to take a nap when you get home from work at 4 and sleep till 6:30. Now you wake up, have some dinner, watch a little TV. Okay, it's 11 o'clock, time to go to bed. It's happening again. I'm not sleepy. Right, because you just woke up at 6:30. So now it becomes like the kid that comes home from school, has a massive snack, and now you put dinner on the table and they're picking around at it. And then you get that whole old dad. Well, that's because you ate that, popsicle and those Cheetos. You ruined your dinner. I love ruined your dinner.
Yeah.
I love this. I love the concept of that. Ruined it. So it's like you ruined your sleep, So I think people have to be careful about the timing, duration of their naps, but I'm in favor of it. I think that I always tell my athletes, look, you're sleeping for the postseason now. It's not, oh, wow, hey, look, guys, we have 3 more games left in the regular season. We're going to make the playoffs. It's official now. Like, mathematically, we're in. Let's start sleeping well. That doesn't work so well. I always joke with them. It's every year I get a call from a team, and they're totally serious. Hey, my name's Kip, and I'm a athletic trainer for this people, and we look like we're going to make the playoffs this year, and we were calling to see if you could maybe come out and help our guys sleep a little bit better. And to me, it's sort of like, hey, I'm Kip. I'm the mayor of this town in Arizona. We are out of water. It's the damnedest thing. Ooh, I didn't mean to say that. It's a terrible thing. And now we're out of water. We were wondering if you could come on out and dam up this river and build a reservoir so we can have some water to give our inhabitants. Sure, I can do that, but when you need that water, you're like
2 years ago.
Yeah, exactly. We needed to get that project going a little while ago, but I'll do my best. No promises here.
That's hilarious.
So I think that you have to kind of look at it that way. But no, napping's great.
Okay. In the book, you talk about a lot of sleeping problems being mental. And when people go to bed, they start this anxiety spiral that's like, oh, I'm not going to sleep. This is the place where I can't sleep. And what can I do? So can you talk a little bit about the mental side of sleeping and how we can get our minds right when it comes to sleeping?
Absolutely. I mean, and some people describe really bad insomnia, like the poor woman who walked out on me and insulted my age. That perhaps, it's like a PTSD situation. I got a great story. When I was in residency, I was walking along. I was like the chief resident of neurology at this hospital and felt like I was a really big deal. And I was taking care of this like a little 90-year-old woman or whatever. And she said, you remind me of my grandson. And so anyway, long story short, when I was walking across like the main atrium of the hospital and had all these like medical students and young residents behind me and really thought I was an important person, that woman was sitting in the lobby and she goes, there he is. That's the little boy doctor I was telling you about. So anyway, random thought just when you talked about that. So, oh my gosh. So, to me, what was the question? Why did I even go off on that tangent?
We were talking about how sleeping is mental and how people get in this anxiety spiral.
So anyway, so to me, this when you sleep at night, there is a challenge here, and the challenge is you're going to do something automatic that you do have some control over. We have to eat, but we can kind of control when we eat. And for some people, they're never going to have a problem with initiating and falling asleep. I think the average person at some point in their life will. I think it'd be very strange to meet somebody at a party and say, how do you sleep? Well, I'm 53 years old. I've always gotten in bed and fallen asleep in 2 minutes without fail. Really, like you lost your job and when Santa Claus was coming, all these things don't really bother you and don't make you excited about, maybe have a little bit of trouble sleeping. So to me, it's something we're all going to deal with. Sleep's like the stock market. We have our ups and downs, So for a lot of people, when they have difficulty with their sleep, it starts to become problematic because now they're going to bed with a very different mindset than they started off with maybe even a few months ago, which was basically, I don't know, I just kind of get in bed and fall asleep. I've never really given it much thought. That's when sleep kind of works the best, which is why a lot of people will tell you, hey, when I watch SportsCenter, try to figure out how well my team did tonight, I'll fall asleep. But if I turn the TV off and hop into bed, I can't fall asleep, right?
Yeah.
Because now you've got a new goal. You're trying to sleep. And so to me, that's why it's really important for people to understand, number one, sleeplessness, to any extent, or insomnia is not defined as a person who can't sleep. It's a person who can't sleep when they want to. That's part A. And part B is you have to have a negative emotional response to it. So the person who says, oh yeah, it takes me 2 hours to fall asleep, but I love it. They don't have insomnia. The person says it takes me 17 minutes to fall asleep and it drives me crazy. By my definition, it has insomnia. So to me, it's really about, to borrow an athlete analogy, let's control what we can control. Let's control nutrition. Let's control your schedule. Let's control your activity level. And most important, let's control your mindset. And the mindset is, look, I'm going to give you a time to sleep that's appropriate. And you're going to be disciplined about that. You're going to go to bed at 11 o'clock. If you feel sleepy, if you don't feel sleepy, you can stay up. That's important for people. I tell people never go to bed when you don't feel sleepy. If tonight you always go to bed at 11 o'clock and you always fall asleep without fail, but tonight's 11 o'clock and I'm not going to be able to fall asleep going in. I'm so wound up about something, or I don't know what it is, but I'm just not sleepy right now, then stay up. And you know what? If you're not hungry for lunch, skip it. It's, we put a lot of pressure on ourselves these days, I think because there's so much more information about sleep. But once you've got your schedule set, it really just becomes, hey, trust the process.
Yeah.
And yes, if you stay up till 3 o'clock in the morning, that's fine. Don't make the mistake of sleeping in. Don't take the 4-hour nap. Accept the fact that, hey, you're going to feel a little bit of sleepiness tomorrow. And maybe during lunch, you're going to think, oh, I could really take a nap right now. Be encouraged by that. So what are you saying? You're saying that there you are in your office eating your lunch, and you want to put your head down and fall asleep, and you know if you do it, you'll be successful. That's great. We just need to have you feel that feeling in a few hours, and your brain will. So to me, sleep has a lot to do with faith. I got pictures of Sports Illustrated all in my office with athletes who've been kind enough to write something on there. Although I used to tell them, if you want to write my name on it or something about sleep, that'd be great. And of course, one football player wrote something like, thank you for sleeping with me. You were so gentle last night, or something just like that. Like, man, I can't put that up in my office now. My wife was. Anyway, so why do I have these things up here? It's because I want a patient to come in and be like, oh, wow, he treats these people. Oh, this guy knows what he's doing. I don't know what I'm doing any more than the next guy. But, it's all about faith. And I want patients to have faith that, look, ups and downs, difficult night here. Sleep is going to be there for you. It's been there all along. You just have to kind of relax the process. And that's why I always tell people I'll never have insomnia because I genuinely don't care. I'm going to go to bed at night. I'm probably going to fall asleep, and that's great. But if I don't, I actually find it amusing. And I actually told a magazine writer one time, I'm going to stay up all night and just rest all night. And I'll write an article about how it felt to go to work the next day, having not slept at all, just rested, thought about how many state capitals I could name, counted backwards from 1,000 by sevens, something to just keep my mind kind of relaxed and thinking about stuff, think about Jot again. That's always easy. And I've tried to write this article forever. And I start, capital Maine's Augusta, I think, and New Hampshire's Montpelier, and where's that Concord? Next thing I know, the alarm clock's going off. I'm like, couldn't do it. Which it really underscores the idea when you try not to sleep, it's really difficult to stay awake. So if we can get people to care about sleep in the right ways and then relax in the right ways, you can really insulate yourself from difficulties with your sleep.
Nice.
It's funny you say that. I used to live in this place, and the bedroom was like right beside this very busy road. And I would go to sleep. And ever since I've been a kid, I sleep with a fan like directly in my face. It's the white noise. But even that white noise, I would hear like these, like it's, if I have noise and it's like consistent, like a wave, that's fine. But when it's inconsistent noise and I would hear these cars whiz by, and it'd be like, it would like wake me up or like prevent me from going to sleep. And I used to get like so frustrated. I'm like, man, I'm not going to get my sleep. And then I got to a point where I was like, I don't care. And I just literally said, well, whatever. The car is going to come. I don't sleep. I don't sleep. And I would fall asleep every single time, like just like that. Like I didn't think about it.
And it's interesting because what you're getting at is I don't see a lot of beach bums in my clinic. Football, hockey, sock, love Dave Matthews and fish. I don't care. That personality. What I see are a bunch of CEOs and elite athletes because that type A tendency of, I got a problem. I got to solve it right now. It's really good. I mean, that's the way I want my accountant and the neurosurgeon to be. But it's not a great thing for sleep. What you want is the neurosurgeon mentality about these aspects of your life, and then I don't care. Like once you do that, you've literally taken the teeth out of insomnia. Insomnia's got nothing at that point. When you stop caring, and that's a hard thing to do. It's hard to turn on and off caring. But once you get that, you're right. It just kind of emasculates the whole. It goes from a terrible dog to a puppy at that point. Insomnia. And I'll have that thought like, oh my gosh, it's like 12:15, I'm still awake. This is great. Okay, I'm going to try that thing for that newspaper or that magazine article. Here I go.
Yeah,
like, this is awesome. And then
So let's say that we've gone through all those basic things, and we understand that we've kind of come over some of those mental hurdles that you can have. There are actual sleep disorders. Can you talk about some of the common sleep disorders, and if we believe we have them, how can we get diagnosed with those?
Sure. So, and that's where, this is great that you're addressing this in the podcast sort of at the end. My book was sort of the same way. I think we focus way too much in media about sleep hygiene. What kind of mattress? What kind of pajamas? How about the Tom Brady pajamas? They seem pretty cool, and they're expensive, but they must be awesome, right? And I'm an elite athlete. I want to wear Tom Brady pajamas. So, all these things are great. I think they constitute probably 25, 30, 35% of the solutions to people's problems. And so what happens is, because we focus so much on sleep hygiene, there is this idea that, well, if the $4,000 mattress didn't work, maybe I needed to buy the $5,000 one. Like this idea that it's always in our control, and it's not. There are definitely sleep disorders out there that you're never going to fix without some sort of professional intervention. If your knee is sore, ice it. Wear the little brace you get at Rite Aid. Take some time off from your biking. Oh, you're feeling better now? Great. You did it. You're not feeling better, or now you can't move your knee? Hey, it might be time to talk to somebody about that and maybe get a picture made of your knee and see what in the world's going on, why you can't bend it more than 20 degrees one way or the other. I don't think people feel that they have the solution to their inability to bend their knee problem in their back pocket or online. Hey, YouTube can't move my knee and see if there's anything I can do about it. Most people, they're beating a path to their primary care doctor or their orthopedic specialist. With sleep, I don't think that in the public we know that. But anyway, so there's tons of things. And the biggest thing to me is, if you're struggling to stay awake, and it's not because you're working 2 jobs and sleeping 3.5 hours every night, you're actually the opposite. Look, I'm going to bed. When I get home from work, sit on the couch, I nod off. My wife wakes me up. I have dinner. I go right back to sleep. She'll eventually sometimes wake me up, sometimes not, to come to bed. I'll get in bed, go right to sleep. I'm sleeping 12 hours. I cannot stay awake during a meeting, and I'm nodding off at stoplights. Then you have to say, well, it's not a sleep amount or quantity problem, but there might be a quality problem there that you may or may not be able to fix. So to me, the biggest indicator that you might have a problem with your sleep is you can't stay awake. And what's ironic is those people often feel like they're great sleepers, at least for a time. Well, right. Doc, I don't know why my wife let me come here, but I could lay right down here on your floor and you could see your next patient with me right between the two of you, and I could go right to sleep easy. They kind of think that that's like kind of the same thing. I could make 100 free throws in a row easy. Like it's sort of like this mark of you're really good at that thing. In fact, they don't really understand, well, why do you think you're able to? I had a guy who said, I can kind of nod off when I mow on my riding lawnmower. I'll just kind of make the turn and then I go across the field and I can kind of nod off there and then I kind of wake up right before I get to the, I had one guy put a tractor into a river because he fell asleep and just drove right into the river. So you have to be careful with that, if you're doing that. I don't condone that at all. So, but he thought that made him the greatest sleeper in the world. Or they had a guy who operated a forklift for a living. So he lived in the forklift and somebody said, hey, I need this thing. He'd wake up, get you that thing. And then when nobody else needed anything, he'd raise it. He was in this forklift that he could be high or low. He'd just go to the very top and go to sleep so that I could see him up there sleeping. So anyway, those are not good things. So yeah, narcolepsy, restless leg, where you get in bed and your legs don't stop moving, or you're grinding your teeth at night, or you have sleep apnea where your brain is being forced to breathe or sleep, but it can't do both at the same time, which is a terrible decision to have to make. So there's lots of things that can go wrong with your sleep. So they're usually pretty easy to diagnose, and the solutions are pretty simple. And even if you're like, look, I'm not going to see a sleep doctor to put my dad in a CPAP device, one of those vacuum cleaner things you wear on your face, and I don't want one of those things. Listen, don't knock it till you try it. If I had a nickel for every guy who came in and said, look, I've been fighting my doctor and my wife for 3 years. If I had known I could feel this good, and it would improve my golf game, it would take away my headaches, and I wouldn't have to wake up to go to the bathroom 100 times a night, and I'd be less irritable and more productive at work, I would have come to see you years ago. I had no idea how bad I felt. That's a very rewarding patient. We see them all the time. So don't suffer.
Okay. Cool. We've had some of our listeners write in questions, and I got a couple of those for you, and then we'll probably close out the show because I think you're getting close to your time. But
we're fine, but that's
we're
great.
fine.
Whatever we need.
Okay.
Yep.
Perfect. We got a couple user questions then for you, or listener questions. So one listener actually wrote in, and the symptoms were very similar to a problem that I've experienced, and some of my friends who are triathletes have also experienced. And I don't know if this is common with endurance athletes or type A people, but the person said, I fall asleep easily, but wake up 6 to 15 times per night. I typically stay asleep for the first 3 to 4 hours, but then wake up every 5 to 60 minutes for the rest of the night. I can easily fall back to sleep, and when I do, I often immediately start dreaming. I've slept like this for my entire life, and a sleep study suggested I may have narcolepsy, but the doctor said my report looked fine. This problem gets worse the more I train.
Yeah, so that's very interesting. So once again, we're talking about an individual whose first half, the deep sleep night part, seems pretty good. The second half, which is mainly REM sleep or dreaming, is not. And he's even saying, was it he or she?
It was he.
He's even saying, my awakening seemed to correspond with dreaming. And so if you look at a cycle of somebody's night, like what their night looks like, those REM cycles come pretty consistently every hour to hour and a half. So an individual who's having difficulty with sleeping while they dream, which is interesting because when we dream, we're paralyzed. So a lot of times, an early sign of a breathing disturbance, somebody whose airway just collapses a little bit too much, they do fine as long as they're not dreaming. But as soon as they start dreaming, their body's paralyzed, which is the way it should be. But the muscles that are keeping the airway open get paralyzed and they collapse. The person wakes up to catch their breath. They realize they were dreaming. They're easily able to fall back to sleep, and they can sleep pretty well until the next cycle of dreaming. And for a lot of people, it all kind of runs together. So one thing I'd be concerned about is something that's not rising to the level of sleep apnea, but could be consistent with some sort of breathing disturbance, which a lot of labs will miss. I think his point about narcolepsy is a good one. So the follow-up question for him would be, how sleepy are you during the day? And if everybody who knows this guy is telling you, and he's telling you too, I sleep all the time. I nod off during meetings. It's kind of a joke in my family. I had a patient yesterday who said they called her dopey, which I thought was really mean because she said they called me dopey like the Seven Dwarf. I said, well, that's really mean because dopey, there's a sleepy. Why don't they just call you sleepy? Like I feel like there's like a subtle jab there. So they're just calling you dopey. But anyway, there's a lot of times these families have this kind of history of this person being sleepy, and everybody knows it. Or college friends are always surprised by, like, you don't go to the champagne slip and slide mixer where everybody's running around naked sliding on the slip and slide. You've chosen to go home and go to bed? Really? Like, this is crazy. Like, this is why you go to college, right? But they're so driven to sleep that nothing's more important than that. So, and I will tell that patient too, or that caller or the person who wrote into you, the narcolepsy is a very difficult diagnosis to make. There is no test that really rules it in, and there's certainly, or rules it out. So if you did a test and your doctor's saying, sounds like narcolepsy, but your test was normal, there is no test that would say, aha, you don't have it. There's just tests that would say it's not supportive. So imagine somebody who's having seizures all the time. And they go see a neurologist, the neurologist does an EEG, and they say, okay, the EEG for this 20-minute period is normal. That doesn't mean you don't have epilepsy. It just means that the study didn't catch it. Now, if during that EEG, they're like, oh my gosh, your brain is really, showing a lot of abnormal activity and spike wave discharges. Okay, well now that test confirms epilepsy, but the normal does not rule it out. And a lot of doctors get that wrong. So if he's struggling, I would say, let's find somebody who can maybe look at this with a little bit of a wider net.
Interesting. Yeah, because the other part too, part that was interesting is if you fall asleep and immediately go into a dream state, that can be
absolutely So it can be a sign of narcolepsy, it can be a sign of severe sleep deprivation, but people know the difference. All of a sudden you're staying up late studying for finals. Exactly. So the other thing with narcolepsy too, real quick, average time for diagnosis, 10 to 15 years after sleep onset. Years. So it's one of those things that's often misdiagnosed and ignored until people, reach their 30s and 40s. So don't give
Interesting.
up.
And then the you'd mentioned that sleep apnea is common, but some people have problems breathing as well, and that can be like a symptom, parasympathetic thing, or what is it?
You mean in terms of breathing at night?
You mentioned that on the second half of sleep, in REM sleep, people have issues breathing.
Oh, so they're having trouble breathing because the muscles that hold the airway open get paralyzed like every other muscle in your body. So now the individual's just on the edge of having breathing disturbances, and they can do okay as long as their muscle tone is good. But for these individuals, when they start to breathe, you can see it in kids too, as they start to dream, their tonsils are so big, they fall in and collapse, close off the airway, and the child, in order to breathe, has to awaken, which terminates the REM sleep, and then they go back to sleep and light sleep, and as they build towards REM again. So it's actually, it's a collapse problem. The loss of muscle tone is enough to collapse that person's airway just enough to not breathe. But if they're awake or not dreaming, their airway is okay.
Interesting. Okay.
So anyway.
All right. Next one. Stuff. Sleeping pills. A lot of people seem to be taking sleeping pills nowadays. You mentioned the doctor who says, oh, you're tired, here's some Ambien. And in your book, you talk about it and you're not a big fan. Can you talk a little bit about sleeping pills and if people are addicted to them, maybe what they can do to help wean themselves off?
Sure. So there's not that many pills out there for sleep that are truly addictive. I mean, any drug that ends in PAM, lorazepam, diazepam, clonazepam, alprazolam, that is an exception. So if you're on those and trying to get off, you might want to wean yourself off of them. But to me, when somebody's taking a sleeping pill, there needs to be a reason. I take this sleeping pill because I'm a night shift worker in an ER. And when I go from my 7P to 7A shift and start working 7A to 7P, I can struggle sometimes for the first few days to initiate sleep. Hey, awesome reason to take a sleeping pill. I am taking the trip of a lifetime to New Zealand, and I will be following in the footsteps of Frodo because I'm a huge Lord of the Rings fan. Okay, great. And I want to get right to it. I don't want to miss that first day because I'm jet lagged. Well, then a sleeping pill makes sense for you. So to me, there needs to be the reason can't be, I need it to fall asleep. Because that's not a real reason, because as we talked about at the beginning of the show, everybody sleeps. So to me, that makes about as much sense as I take an appetite stimulant before every meal. Why? Well, I will make sure I get hungry. Well, have you had problems before? Yeah, I have. You're laughing, but one day I was not even hungry for dinner and I didn't eat it. And it really freaked me out because you know what happens when you starve to death, right? It's not pretty. Like, so you make these massive leaps, and so now when you start getting into sleeping pill use, what does it really boil down to? It boils down to fear. I saw a patient yesterday. I've been trying to get him off these really ugly sleeping pills. And he said, I tried, Dr. Winter, and in 2 days my sleep his word was badness, BADNESS. And so I had to go back on it.
Wow.
I was like, well, you didn't, but okay. So it's that fear of, and I can imagine what he looks like there, that first night, okay, I'm going to try it. Here we go. It's 11:30. I'm still, so it's that kind of thing where we just need to kind of get it. So sleeping pills are not good. They often make people sleep worse. There's never been a sleeping pill that's been shown to improve performance. So a lot of people say, look, I don't want to take the sleeping pill, but this is a huge race tomorrow and I can't afford not to sleep. So what I hear you saying is that by taking the sleeping pill, you're guaranteeing your performance against the night where you wouldn't have. Correct. Not true. You find me one research paper that shows that. I mean, in fact, when you look at the research, it's pathetic. Taking this pill adds 7 minutes of total sleep and will make you fall asleep in an average of 4.5 minutes faster. Really? So you think that's the big deal? Hell, I've been on like cell phone, I look at my Instagram for 7 minutes before I go to bed. So once you just put your phone away, there's your 7 minutes. So I plug it up in your kitchen. So anyway, to me, it's they're not necessary.
Nice. Okay. The last question that we're going to ask you, we ask this to everybody on the show. We call it the watt point question. And in cycling, watts are a big thing. So how much power you can put into the pedals. And every time we do the show, we ask our guest if they listen to the advice on the show, how many watts is their advice worth in their performance? I think we pretty much covered the answer to this. You said that a cyclist could gain 20 to 25% performance improvement by sleeping well, or lose 20 to 25% of their power if they don't sleep well? Is that where you'd stay?
Yeah. So what I would say is the individual who abuses themselves versus the individual who does everything perfectly, I think that swing easily is 25%. Now, if you're saying to me, look, I sleep okay, but what if I got a better mattress and I tried to eat a little bit better and not have caffeine before I went to bed and really get the TV out of my bedroom? Yeah, I don't think that's 25% there, but I certainly think it would be 5 to 10 easily.
Okay. That's great advice. And that's a perfect number for this show. So I've always said that as humans, we're born and we have user manuals for everything. We have user manuals for our TVs, our toaster ovens, our cars, our phones, but nobody ever made a user manual for the human body. And I think your book is really the user manual for the sleep component of being a human. It's really, really good. So anyone else, the book covers sleep studies, sleep efficiency. There's all these other things that we couldn't cover on the show today, but you really should listen to. So if people want to learn more about you and your book, where can they find that?
I have a web page. It's www.CVILLE, it's short for Charlottesville, Neuro and Sleep. It's all run together. You can just look up Dr. Winter and Sleep. It's probably one of the first things that comes up.
Yeah.
On that website, there's a section there's a section about me. If you want to learn more about me, it'll put you right to sleep. Or you can find the section that says press. And I try to kind of get good articles on there that I think are helpful to people. So you can kind of do a little keyword search on that, sleeping pill and insomnia, whatever. I try to keep my Twitter account pretty active. It's Sport Sleep Doc, SportSleepDoc. My nurse practitioner has a fantastic Twitter account, and she really finds some interesting things about sleep. And she's sleep _ N as in Nancy, P as in Peter, so nurse practitioner. She's got a wonderful Twitter account. So I think those are two great references if you're somebody who follows Twitter, just to kind of stay up to date with things that we think are meaningful, well-researched, important points, or just fun things about sleep.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's probably a good place to start.
Your book, The Sleep Solution, where can we get that?
You can order it right now on Amazon. If you just The Sleep Solution, why your sleep's broken and how to fix it. One click and it's on your way. Or you can, like you said, there's an audio version if you don't mind my voice. There's also a Kindle version. There's a German version, a Dutch version. There's all kinds of stuff. So whatever, awesome. A Spanish version. So whatever you need, it's out there.
Perfect. Cool, man. Can't thank you enough for being on the show today. This was a really fun, exciting. I haven't laughed as much in an episode ever. So thank you so much for coming on the show. And I'm sure you're going to get some traffic from this show. Thank you very much.
I appreciate it. I appreciate your patience. Thanks.
Yeah, no worries. Take care. Thank you for listening to the episode. Be sure to listen to episode 7, where we interview nutrition expert Daryl Griffiths to learn how studying and understanding your sweat can help you become a faster cyclist. If you enjoyed the show, please help us by sharing our podcast and by leaving a rating or review. If you want to learn more about our company, FLO Cycling, please visit us online at flocycling.com. That's F as in Frank, LOCYCLING.com. You can also find us under FLO Cycling on Facebook and Instagram. Until next time, ride safe.